As I've gotten older and my brain has received its first ever thoughts, a story having a protagonist that I enjoy has become increasingly more important to me. This is something I've brought up in a certain previous video, but as it's relevant to the main topic here, I feel the need to restate it here again, at least for the sake of completion. It's not as if I gatekeep myself from liking something if it has a protagonist that isn't my absolute favorite. For instance, believe it or not, while I am still deeply obsessed with the Great Ace Attorney duology, I'm not overly passionate about its protagonist, Ryunosuke. Before I get shot or something, I don't dislike him or anything. In fact, I would say I like him a lot. But he doesn't really invade my brain the way a lot of other characters do. But anyway, the point here is that while a protagonist isn't the only thing that can define a series, I've taken note of just how many stories that I hold in very high regard, like Sarigoto, Monogatari, Flower, Sun, and Rain, Trails, and of course, the main topic of this video, Rance. It made me notice how, having a pretty peak protagonist is a great recipe to make something permanently reside in a section of my brain. It may sound dumb, but this realization is kind of what made me appreciate Rance even more than I already did. As while I obviously love so many things about the Rance series, Rance himself is the heart and soul of the franchise in my eyes. It quite literally wouldn't be the same without him. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that he is genuinely my favorite individual aspect of it all. So, well, yeah, as I'm sure you could guess by now, I've wanted to talk about him in great detail for a long time. And since he managed to pull ahead of the poll I did a while ago to celebrate 1,000 subscribers, it's finally time to yap about the glorious king himself, our beloved hero Rance. Here's your obligatory spoiler warning for all of the Rance games here, blah 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 blah. There will also be Rance X spoilers, but similar to my previous video, I will only dedicate it to one individual section, and I'll include timestamp on the screen right before it happens, so you'll be able to skip ahead with no concern. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Let's get the most obvious thing out of the way first. Rance is just absolutely hilarious. The humor is one of my favorite parts of the entire Rance franchise, and naturally, Rance himself is often at the root of a lot of it. Generally, I consider the ability to include a lot of character monologues to be one of the strengths of the visual novel medium, as I love how it can flesh out characters and add more depth or value to every scene. And, of course, Rance makes full use of this. Though it is worth mentioning that while his own, internal monologues are unhinged, he equally just blurts out whatever the hell he wants, no matter who is around him, and it's just never, not funny to me. I love his unbelievable self-confidence, ability to justify literally anything he does, no matter how ridiculous it is, and just his unbelievable impulsiveness to do whatever he wants. This guy owning the store is annoying? I should kill him. This ugly guy breathed near me? Maybe I should just bash his skull in. Yeah, I know that this girl is evil and might cause the end of the world, but she's cute, so I kinda want her anyways. Following a protagonist like this is honestly kind of refreshing to me in a way. I'm not going to claim that every protagonist in the world is a standard goody two-shoes because, that's just obviously not true. But I'm sure you can understand what I'm trying to say here. Wholesome, heroic protagonists can be, and often are, pretty great. But there's just something so fun about getting to follow an individual who is, very much the complete opposite of being a traditionally good person. It kind of has a unique vibe in my head, I guess. Of course, with how this series is crafted, Rance is genuinely heroic and admirable in his own way, which is one of my favorite things about the franchise and him respectively, but that's a bit besides the point. I don't know how popular of a take this is, but I'm personally in the boat of I don't really believe that there's a single bad Rance game, at least in terms of like only their story or writing, besides maybe OG Rance 1. The reason I feel this way is just because of Rance's writing and monologues throughout each game. For the most part, I felt like Rance games never really had like long, dull stretches in the story, purely because I could never get tired of reading Rance's dialogue in general. You know, at some point, it hit me. I realized I was in way too deep, too unbelievably Rance-pilled, when during my time with almost every other game, anime, book, you name it. Sometimes I just zone out and think, you know, this story would be a lot better if Rance were the main character. Trails of Cold Steel, Genshin Impact, Persona 4, Apollo Justice, he could save mid-games around the world. Anyway, while we're on this topic of Rance's personality, dialogue, etc. being honestly perfection, this leads us pretty smoothly into our next point. Due to Rance, well, being him, practically all of the character interactions and dynamics involving him always tend to be entertaining in some way, and or practically crafted in a way to cause the greatest emotional damage to me. Almost every single character in this franchise has a memorable dynamic and interactions with Rance. If I listed every single dynamic that I loved, well, let's just say I would be here literally all day. So I'll just talk about something I think about often in particular. You know, have some diversity, I guess, right? Let's start with something I don't get to talk about often. Athena. I know the 4.x duology catches some shit for being kinda whatever, kinda mid. And you know, I understand that these games aren't like the greatest things ever created, but I've always had a soft spot for these two purely because the duo of Athena and Rance is just absolutely hilarious to me. The two of them combined have one, maybe two functional brain cells, and it just amuses me to no end. If there's one thing I want everyone to know about me, it's that I'm secretly Kentaro and Miki's biggest fan. And I've personally always found the dynamic between those two, Nico and Rance, to be extremely amusing. In Kichiko, I always thought it was hilarious how Rance can just essentially bully Kentaro hard enough until he earns his own mini Rance attack. How Rance is not very discreetly trying to get rid of Kentaro because he's unbelievably down bad for his hot sword, and you know, also Miki. How Rance is like, wow, why the hell do I have chaos when I could have a hot babe sword instead? How it's sort of a running gag that every time Rance tries to get with Miki, there are usually unbelievably horrible consequences, including, but not limited to, literally ending the entire world. Wow! In general, I think Rance's interactions with practically all of the men in this franchise tend to be hilarious in some form. I love how, like, yeah, to the average person, Rance is kind of a slimeball. And then you have Rick, a very beautiful man with a wonderful heart. And instead of him being repulsed by Rance, he's like, wow, Rance-sama is a genius, a very good-hearted individual who I will follow until the world explodes. Amen. It's such a funny contrast to what you'd expect, and I find it to be extra silly too because of just how much Rance picks on him for being a babyface. As you might expect, I enjoy Rance's dynamic with Patton for similar reasons. I love their very silly bro dynamic, and you know, how Patton is all things considered a fairly normal and level-headed dude after Rance 3, and yet, despite Rance being like, I hate ugly men, and how you might expect Patton to like have some sort of grudge or something against Rance, they kind of hit it off together in a pretty hilarious way. I unfortunately don't have the original tweet offhand, so I recreated the image from it. But somebody posted this meme with Rance and Patton, and to me, it just embodies their dynamic perfectly throughout Rance 9. I definitely think about it whenever that game comes across my mind. The last male character I'll include in this tidbit is Chaos. I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but I just find it absolutely hilarious how, for all intents and purposes, Chaos is essentially just Rance as a sword, but Rance just constantly throws him under the bus. He's like, dude, shut the fuck up, man. You're being weird. You're ruining the vibes. It's just like, I don't know, funny irony, I guess? It also makes their conversations just extremely amusing to read. This also does go alongside the pretty good humorous bits of Nico that I mentioned earlier as well. So, as we can tell, in terms of pure humor, pretty much every Rance dynamic excels in this. But an aspect that maybe goes a bit underappreciated, at least I guess depending on who you ask, is how Rance is often at the core of a lot of the various girls' development, and how he himself can be a very uplifting and important individual for them. Even if, you know, he is a complete goober, to say it nicely. Some of my favorite examples of this include Ursa, Crook, Kohime, and even minor characters like Kimchi. Obviously though, I'm not trying to say that these are the only characters who receive this type of development. These are just some of the ones that come to mind. And, you know, I don't want to go over literally every character in the franchise again. So, I've already made an entire video about Ursa, so I won't really go in depth here. If you're curious on my thoughts, you should check it out. But anyway, while Rance isn't some magical hero in a relationship, I've still always loved and appreciated how his presence in Ursa's life was one of the main factors that allowed her to start walking again, to gain her confidence back. Due to how their dynamic originally started, with her being rather weakly, passive, so much self-deprecation, it was honestly really heartwarming almost. Seeing it evolve into Ursa essentially treating him like a troublesome little brother in a way. It's very cute and very fun. For Kohime, I had always loved how much of an older brother-esque figure Rance took on for her after Nobunaga went all demon mode. It shines the most during/after Kohime's assault, and how he's there to support her through something so traumatizing. The way this duo interacted always warmed my heart a lot, and made me giggle a ton too from being honestly rather adorable at times. Obviously, due to the nature of the many female characters throughout this franchise, it's not surprising that Rance goes full horn dog mode for a lot of them. I mean, fuck dude, me too! But I love how, like, he's obviously very capable and willing to be a caring, supportive older figure too. This, of course, applies to his dynamic with Risa as well. It's just, I don't know, really nice, I guess? I'm not going to try and preach to you that, actually, Rance is the most multifaceted and complex protagonist ever created. But I will say that I love how there are dynamics like this that show that there are like multiple sides to his character too. I appreciate that a lot. Crook and Kimchi kind of embody a similar aspect of Rance's character being shown that I love. To both girls, he has a mini speech involving how, you know, prioritizing your own happiness and well-being is important. That there's no point in making others happy if you yourself aren't happy. Seeing Crook's mentality shift, seeing how much she loves Rance to the point where she is willing to essentially defy God in her own way for his protection, it's just one of my many favorite things about Quest. Not to get all emo on Main, but his speech to Crook honestly altered my own mentality too. For Kimchi specifically, the same principle applies to her, even if it's less technically relevant to the plot than Crook. Despite it perhaps being a small moment in such a long and grand game, it really stood out to me. After Kichiko, I had already established my feelings that, yeah, Rance is genuinely a good-hearted person in his own way, and not some one-note, in a negative sense, character. But this just kind of further proved it to me. In case you need a little reminder, he basically lectures Kimchi about her self-sacrificial nature is no good and that she needs to value herself. That she shouldn't be doing sexual acts of people that she doesn't want to. That she should care about how she feels more. Watching as that weight got lifted off her shoulders made me tear up, honestly. I love positivity! I love encouraging good things! I don't know if anyone cares about Kimchi as much as I do, but she's always been one of my favorite minor characters purely because of this scene. To continue on this train of thought, when I look back at moments like these, and obviously many, many more, it kind of gives me a genuine appreciation for how he is written throughout these games. I'm not trying to say something like, hey guys, Rance is a very good person and everything he does is good. Obviously, that's not true, and I'm not going to try and excuse his actions at every single moment. But to me, the series does such a good job of portraying that, Rance is not just some goofy / silly and evil dude. He does have genuine development in his own way and admirable aspects to his character. For example, as I briefly mentioned earlier, his relationship with Risa and Kichiko, alongside Quest and everything onwards, is just absolutely adorable and wholesome as hell. Seeing him take on the overprotective dad role in her life is honestly some of the most, oh my god, I'm going to explode from cuteness, content that I've ever seen. While we're on the topic of Rance's characterization in relationships, I'd like to talk about how his relationship develops with Sill, as I feel it's very crucial to his character as a whole. Prior to Kichiko, there had always been bits of Rance being too tsundere to admit how much Sill genuinely means to him, how the thought of her being hurt does tear him apart. Like during the bit where Satella kidnaps Sill, or how at the end of Rance 4, he starts to put it simply, crash out at realizing that, she might have actually died helping him. But from Kichiko onwards, I began #noticing him confronting these feelings so much more. Allow me to go on a bit of a Kichiko side tangent. I've been wanting to yap about my experience with his reaction to finding Sill's dead body in the prison for God knows how long at this point. I know it's technically not canon in an already non-canon game, but to put it simply, I don't care. In case you don't already know, in my first Kichiko playthrough, I didn't save Sill in time because I sucked ass. Big surprise there. While I expected that there might have been some sort of punishment for not saving her very quickly, I kind of didn't expect that she might, actually die. I mean, she's the main girl. Surely not, right? Hey, look, I had cinematic parallels with Rance himself at this point. Anyway, so after slowly but surely finally conquering the evil Hellman gang and feeling, kind of good about it, I got slapped in the face with complete and utter depression. Seeing Rance slowly process everything, watching him break down completely, alongside the mental image of stuff like, him carrying her corpse from outside of the prison and him being the one to bury her. Oh, wow. Wow! I felt so fucking horrible. It's honestly so genuinely painful for me to revisit these scenes. It kind of felt like a slap in the face that yeah man, Rance isn't invincible. And deep inside, he loves her so much. And he can only really truly process that after she's goddamn gone. I love how obviously by now, the story does paint a clear picture for how much Rance loves Sill and how important she is to him. But I think it's really cool how this is kind of reflected in gameplay too. Sill is essentially one of the main things that keeps Rance a bit more grounded, I guess, in his actions and his emotions as a whole. But once she's gone, there can be genuine consequences or similar portrayals of what happens when Rance loses Sill, when Sill is no longer in his life. such as how Sill is tied to saving Shusuka, or that the lack of Sill can lead to the Demon King Rance ending. While this ending obviously isn't a negative consequence in terms of gameplay mechanics, it, for one, literally is the end of humanity, so I think it's still worth including here. But secondly, it represents how without Sill, Rance loses his, for lack of a better way to put it, quote-unquote reason to remain a good person. In the mainline games, this type of grief and wide spectrum of emotions as he slowly opens up more is present too. Like when Rance has to come to terms with still being trapped in the ice in Sengoku, or the genuine joy he feels at their brief reuniting in Quest. I'm not going to go through every single individual moment between these two because, well, I'd be here all day. So I'll summarize an essay's worth of thoughts into one sentence. I love their relationship so much, and I really love what it does for Rance's character. With that very long yap session out of the way, I now would like to dedicate some time to more minor things that I love about Rance. Although, this next point is less about Rance's character and more about how the series utilizes him as a protagonist, if that makes sense. It's obvious that Rance himself is not some genius mastermind, but due to his, for lack of a better way to put it, #built different brain, whether it be such as how he can just have an intense motivation for a cute girl, how he's not afraid of anyone or anything because obviously he's the hero of the world, there's nothing to be afraid of, how he has a general lack of filter or just lacking biases / concerns for certain things, like who the fuck cares about these demons? I would win. Due to all these many attributes of himself, he's able to craft up quote-unquote unique strategies which end up being successful, whether it be due to surprise factor or just pure ridiculousness, and they're often super entertaining to sit through. This is relevant in like every Rance game pretty much, but in particular, I love how it's utilized in 9 considering the, I guess, scope of what happens in that game. Next minor thing, I like that sometimes he's just, like, low-key a little dork. For example, his obsessions with shells is, like, actually kind of cute. Like, his conversations with Crook where they yap about different shells and collecting the coolest ones or, like, the brightest ones or whatever were always so silly, but, like, I loved them. Another type of silliness is present in his dynamic with Kenshin. I love how she goes on and on about how much she loves him. She practically writes the cutest and most romantic poetry about her feelings towards him, and he's just completely shocked by everything. He's just utterly flabbergasted and has no idea how to comprehend the fact that someone so genuinely perfect is actually in love with him. His reactions to her were always pure gold to me. The last thing I'd like to briefly talk about before I touch upon some X spoilers is his design. Hey, you know, you can't have a Jordan video without talking about character designs. Although in this instance, I more so want to talk about how it's become so iconic due to his own character. I think it's honestly kind of sick that while his design isn't really insanely original or anything, I mean, it's basically just some variation of cape, armor, sword, you know, normal hero type stuff, but his personality and writing have led me to just like absolutely love it. Plus other iconic parts of his character, like his gahahaha and his reoccurring shark teeth grin just kind of further add to his power. Most of his designs are about equal to me because, you know, multiple kings can coexist after all, but my personal favorite will always be his design in Kichiko. Wow, can you tell that I really love Kichiko, Rance? Anyway, considering the tone of the game, and hell, even the just name of the game itself, Brutal King Rance, The imposing black and red cape to complement his green armor just fits him so perfectly in my eyes. I mean, just look out how good he looks on the Alisoft artwork. Mwah. This design, if I had to ever pick one, perfectly captures who Rance is to me. So with this all out of the way, it's time for the Rance X spoiler section. Yippee! Yay! Yahoo! Wow! I'll place a timestamp somewhere on the screen so you can skip ahead now if you'd like. I'll stop yapping for a little bit so there's time to click off with no concern. Okay. Hello, my spoiler friends. Wow, Rance X! What a game, huh? By the time I reached Rance X, I was already a proud Rance is the best protagonist of all time believer. But this game took my feelings and amplified them up to 11. The ending of part 1 and then part 2 just destroyed my entire life. First of all, remember when I commented on Rance grieving over Sill and Kichiko in other games? Fucking wow! They really brought that back in full force here. There was nothing that could have prepared me for him watching Sill get blown the fuck up, man! And then, despite his constant parading about, self-sacrifice, it's a big no-no, and how his heroism leads him to, well, not literally sacrificing himself for Miki's sake, because, obviously he didn't die in that instance, but, well, we saw just how much mental torture he went through as a result. All for one cute girl's freedom. Ha ha ha. Wow. Thanks, man. Watching him cling so hard to what's left of his humanity to not give into the big bad demon blood. What if I just cried forever? For real, it's just pure cinema, and I feel like it's such a perfect way to have Rance's character progress at this point, especially considering his general heroic attitude. To sort of follow up on my huge tangent about Rance's impact on the characters around him, I love how part 2 shows just how much impact Rance has had on the individuals surrounding him. There's obviously his literal children running around to save the world, but watching how characters like Nagi, Shizuka, and Satella all put themselves through various forms of hell, essentially, in order to keep him from losing his humanity completely. Oh my god. It's just so perfect. It really shows that Rance is the king of the world. Like, look at his influence, man. Did I cry the moment he returned to his original self? Yes. Yes, I did. Accompanied by the best final boss ever created? The single best moment in all of fiction? Girl, you already know the wild roller coaster of emotions I was on. This isn't even mentioning the moment where he finally got to reunite with Sill. Like, oh my god, man. I have no words. Rance X is just the greatest game of all time. I love it, man. I love it. Before we end this bit, I'd just like to say that, watching Rance suffer is genuinely painful. It hurts my soul. No joy whatsoever. Zero! I promise you that. But I have to admit it, because if I don't admit it, who else will? The Demon King outfit and vibe is like kind of hot. He fits the red and black aesthetic really nicely. Like, wow. Girl, I'm very sorry that this all happened to you. You didn't deserve any of that, but at least you look good. Alright everyone, it's taken a while, but we're finally here at the end now. I apologize if this video feels a bit more rambly than usual. I normally try to trim the fat on a lot of my thoughts, but considering that A, Rance is the protagonist with a shit ton of content, and B, I have so many thoughts about this man, I try to embrace the yap galore a bit more here. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. This video took a lot longer than I'd like due to school, but it was still so much fun to work on. Genuinely, I got to revisit and think about so much stuff from throughout this series, and it just once again further cemented that it's truly my favorite franchise of all time, and I doubt that will ever change. All hail our glorious king Rance X. Yay! Oh, and of course, thank you everyone for 1,000 subscribers! Yay! I'm so happy and thankful that so many people enjoy listening to my silly rambling videos. Since we're at the end now, it's time for the typical plugging bit. Do all the cool YouTube things, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, leave a like and comment. More Rance content will be on the way. Yay! Woohoo! Follow me on Twitter and Twitch because I like to tweet about stuff, especially like video updates, and I retweet pretty nice art. And for my Twitch, I like to stream sometimes. Yay! Fun! So, with all that done, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around.